Very good morning to all our viewers outside there. Welcome to another edition of ACFIM Talks. Today, my name is Abel Eselu and I'm sitting in for Mr. Felix Kafuma, who is the host of ACFIM Talks. Today, we are going to be discussing about OMORO by-elections, implications for the upcoming by-elections in Uganda. It's official that the member of parliament elect for OMORO County is Mr. Andrew Ojok Olanya, the son to the departed former Speaker of Parliament, Right Honorable Jacob Olanya. As ACFIM, we congratulate the people of OMORO, the Party of National Resistance Movement, and the family of the late Jacob Olanya for this victory. This by-election had a number of interesting dynamics, and it was feared that a repeat of Kayunga by-election would have happened on the cards. Notably, it also attracted the interest of the Western donors who deployed an 8-person election observation team on the ground. As it turned out to be, the exercise was smooth despite massive deployment of security members, and by early evening the results had been tallied and announced. But on the ugly side, we have seen videos and pictures which are being shared on social media and mainstream news of plainclothes men arresting polling agents, political leaders of mainly opposition parties. But also, vehicles were also moving around with concealed number plates, and it's alleged that these vehicles were being used for partisan politics. They're mainly government vehicles. So in today's discussion, I'm going to be joined by a community journalist and also a CEO who is an engineer called Olanya Oleng Tony. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Nile Media Group, a multimedia company based in Gulu. Nile Media Group runs a number of company subsidiaries like Nile Events, Nile Blog, Nile Radio, Nile Foundation, Nile Technology, and Nile TV as a flagship brand. So, Engineer Olanya Oleng, you've been on ground, you've been following the OMORO by-elections since they started, since the nomination day until yesterday when the polls were concluded. I want you to, from your point of view as a community journalist on ground, how would you sum up the OMORO by-elections?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope I'm clear.
Yes, you can be heard.
I want to first of all appreciate ACFIM for taking time to follow through this by-election that was highly contested. I also want to appreciate everyone that has been covering this by-election, especially from the journalistic perspective, and also as someone who seasonally follows politics. I will give my remarks as to what was observed. One, as you clearly stated, one of the key things that was highly observed, which I had hinted on in the previous discussion here, was the presence, the heavy presence of security that police spokesperson for Aswa River Police, Aswa Regional Police Station said that the deployment was meant to manage the intelligence that they've gotten for security, possible insecurity. The deployment was meant to make sure that there was peace in the entire by-election process. That the deployment was meant to manage the security of the VIPs who were expected in the area. And indeed, we saw the Prime Minister, we saw the Speaker, we saw the President, and a number of other delegations. The leader of opposition was on ground. So that is what the security gave us in terms of their explanation for the deployment. However, as keen observers, we saw also the presence of other VIPs and dignitaries, especially foreign delegates from about 7 foreign countries, foreign delegates in Uganda, who are as observers of the electoral process. those perhaps are the VIPs that we observed on ground. But furthermore, into the nitty-gritties of the deployment that we saw, we clearly also saw deployment of security vans and security patrol cars, especially double cabin cars that had no number plates. Other cars had number plates that you could clearly tell perhaps were fabricated, could see fresh marks. Other cars had covered number plates, and these were very, very much numerous. As that was ongoing, and that was seen the day before the by-election, we clearly saw also a number of arrests being made, especially from the FDC camp. From the FDC camp, we saw the arrest of Honorable KNPP, who was picked up by police the night before the by-election. Honorable KNPP was the one charged for the control and management of the election on the FDC side. He was picked and he slept and spent the night in the cells. I think up to around 4 5 p.m. That is when he was released of the following day. That was yesterday. We also saw the FDC secretary of the district of OMORO arrested, and we've learned that he was beaten by perhaps his people who arrested him, and that is an allegation that we are proving. We're trying to cross-check with the facts, but we learned he's not in the best medical condition. That's from the FDC camp, and a number of other arrests. Of course, lastly from the FDC camp, we saw the FDC offices broken into. That was the night when their officials were picked, party officials. Another party that was clearly targeted that we saw was the National Unity Platform, that had its offices broken into 2-3 days before the by-election. Then later on, the day the president was going, that was Wednesday, the day the president was going to OMORO, that was Wednesday 24th, we saw NRM leaders, Richard Toduong, the Secretary General, we saw mobilizers of the party going to visit that office in a show of solidarity, as the party officials were intimating in the video that was circulating on media. Of course, if the office was broken into the day before, then the following day, party officials of NRM go to the NUP office that was broken into to show solidarity as part of what they called multi-party dispensation maturity. That was the language that was used. Then later on, also we saw numerous arrests of NUP mobilizers. We saw a number of them picked. In the very day of the election, we saw the member of parliament for one of the constituencies was picked. A member of parliament under the NUP ticket who had gone to camp with the NUP team to protect their votes was picked. We also clearly saw a number of other arrests that were on the NUP, especially on the NUP and opposition in general. Most of their polling agents were picked. That was what was one of the things we witnessed. Of course, police was giving reasons when questioned by the media. They were giving reasons like these people were being picked and they were not targeted. But at least I can authoritatively say no one was picked from the NRM camp. And most of the arguments that police was making was that these people are being picked because they're not following the electoral guidelines. So those were the disparities that we saw. And of course, most importantly, one of the key things that we saw was the fact that money was being distributed to a tune of 10,000 and voters were being ferried. We saw in the news, which was captured by Daily Monitor and New Vision Press, that later on in the afternoon, an hour or ago to the closure of the polling, we saw an accident that occurred, and 4 of the voters who are being ferried on a UPDF truck. All of us know UPDF is supposed to be a non-partisan force. UPDF is supposed to take part in politics, but UPDF was ferrying voters. We've been reliably informed those voters were from the NRM camp, and we were told, just like it's because it is evident that these 4 were left even by the roadside, having gotten the accident. And it was a very bad scene. Some of us witnessed the pictures, and it is very gruesome accident. And of course, the question would be, what is the legality of the UPDF force ferrying voters to go and clear-cut situation that could form part of the evidence, or an next that would be used in the by-election court petition. Of course, we did see a lot of other things, just like I was trying to mention, the issue of money that was very, very much key in the by-election. We saw money being distributed. Of course, that one I can tell you, money was not only being distributed by the NRM camp, we saw money being distributed even from the opposition forces. The NUP camp was allegedly having members of its party who were picked and allegedly for misuse of government cars. We saw the mayor of one of the districts, I haven't gotten the name right, but a mayor who had a local government car, and the car was impounded. The mayor is from the NUP camp. We learned that security suggests that he was using government car. But of course, this still goes back to the question of other ministers who are using government cars to campaign for the party flag bearer of the NRM, who eventually won the election on a landslide. Of course, we will punch holes into the winning, definitely. And we saw also a number of RDCs who were campaigning for the NRM flag bearer. And to my knowledge, RDCs were partitioned and manned, tasked to man sub-county by sub-county. So at least we saw a number of things that were not proper to the multi-party dispensation, a number of things that are not proper to the use of public property or government property, especially government vehicles. A case in point, we saw the leader of opposition using the parliamentary car. In this case, he has not gone to do parliamentary work. He's going to do his party work. So we would expect him to use either a party car or his official vehicle, his private vehicle, not the parliamentary vehicle. Likewise, we would expect the same from the RDCs, would expect the same from the ministers, would expect the same from every official. Okay, maybe let alone the person of the president who is by law given a lot of disparities. Of course, he has a lot of privileges within the law. That one is within the law, but at least the ministers, the different stakeholders, and the different government officials were not supposed to use government cars in a government, in a private party matter that was being held. So that is a question of misuse of proper of misuse of public funds. A question of because you'd ask yourself who fueled the cars. Okay, they're using official government cars. Who fueled the cars? If it comes to the use of money in the by-election, money was spent to a larger extent. It was the money that was controlling the voting pattern. Of course, we've received and I believe you've seen allegations from the NUP camp through the leader of opposition, who made it clear in the press conference that they saw a number of vote bribery, and of course, allegations of 10,000 being distributed, allegations of 20,000 being distributed pre-election, and then even in the course of the day of the election. So those were a number of things that were being recorded, and we believe, as we've seen, that of course most of these things are now has been collected as evidence, and we have heard from at least reliably confirmed that we've heard from the camp of Alliance for National Transformation ANT candidate Kiza Oscar. Kiza has notified our team that he will be contesting this by-election. He already has a court case already filed. He claims the NRM has been tossing him up and down whenever he wants to file the case, and that is a matter that we believe will be shaping the by-election. We've seen that Kiza says he has a case, and he talks about the contention of the name, but of course also he goes ahead to tell us that he is compiling more evidence from the by-election to file a case in the Gulu High Court, which will be, of course, an interesting turn of events to follow through. It will be incumbent upon him, because court works on evidence. Court works on evidence that has been adduced. He said that he who alleges must provide proof. So it remains incumbent upon the people who are going to file the petition to prove to court that indeed there was voter bravery. We've been reliably informed we've gotten information from the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform that they have evidence that they can file in court. They have evidence that shows there was voter bribery. And of course, there are things that we saw ourselves as the members of the press, of course, money exchanging hands, that we leave it to the people who are going to file the case in police. For us, is to bring it and observe the election as we saw. Perhaps that's what I could say for now.
Okay, thank you. Tony, you've just and you just said the NRM candidate, of course, won with a landslide victory. But from your point of view, does the electoral outcome reflect a true picture of what happened on ground in terms of when candidates were campaigning and you try to get your own ways on? Does it really reflect the landslide victory? Does it reflect what happened on ground before election day?
Thank you so much. I have been observing this by-election, and I've been trying to look into the deeper perspectives of the major talking points, or perhaps the things that would shape this by-election. And I can tell you, the win to me does not clearly show, especially what is on ground. Why would I say that? It's from the results that elected 1,000 votes. The NUP, who is the closest in this race, has about 1,500 plus votes. Now, I would clearly tell you this, that even when the father of Andrew Jokolanya, who is now the MP elect for OMORO, the NRM flag bearer, even when he was contesting in the previous election, he never got that margin of 14,000 votes. He did not get that 14,000 votes. Okay? Now you'd ask yourself the question, why would his son come and get more than him? Okay? Why would the closest contender? Because the closest contender in the previous election got 5,000 plus votes. In this case, they're telling us the closest contender, who is Tolet Simon Akeja, of the NUP, got only 1,500 votes. So there would be questions to how the voting pattern could have changed that fast. Yet we also clearly saw that there was a very, very highly contestation between the NUP candidate, Tolet Simon Akeja, and the NRM candidate, who in this case, for me, I would think the votes or the numbers does not reflect exactly what is on ground. Of course, we clearly saw a low voter turnout. There were things that we could quickly punch holes into. We saw low voter turnout. And of course, when we spoke to some few locals, majority of them were having a feel of intimidation because of the heavy security deployment, let alone that OMORO as a district has a very close linkage to a very hot political and, of course, violent background. You know, OMORO is of a background of violence. It's the district where Joseph Kony, the former, the rebel leader of the Lord Resistance Army, comes from. You know that. It's a very, very complicated constituency. So you would wonder if there is no psychological attachment to the heavy security deployment, to the roadblocks and barricades, to the military siege, because the deployment was exceptionally intense, just like security explained. But of course, you'd expect this is a district. Northern Uganda is just trying to recover from over 20 years of insurgency. So there's that psychological torture that when you deploy heavily, you'd clearly see how the locals would feel attachment to the previous war or what has been ravaging the region. So to me, I feel the deployment worked psychologically in terms of discouraging the voters from turning up for the by-election. It caused a lot of shiver and intimidation. You could feel the tension in the public. That was one thing I observed. So one, there was low voter turnout. Then two, we clearly saw a sharp rise of over 17,000 voters. Okay? In the previous by-election, in 2021, we saw 21,000 voters registered. Then the Electoral Commission in this by-election alone brought for us 38,000. That means our Electoral Commission is telling us there were 17,000 new voters. I mean, that to scientifically differ from doesn't add up. I mean, you are telling us in a space of 1 year, you've gotten 17,000 new voters. So it's a question of whether the Electoral Commission had an added advantage. Had a very higher number of voters that doesn't add up. I mean, it's not reasonable to me to have 17,000 new voters. Of course, the argument they were trying to tell us is each and every day there are new people. There are very many people who turn 18 years old. So the question would be, do you want to tell us in OMORO county alone? That is a county, not the whole district. In a county in OMORO, there were 17,000 new voters 17,000 new voters to create a sharp rise from 21,000 voters in the 2021 general election to 38,000 voters in this by-election. So that is a question that we're looking deep into. We're trying to question to find out how the 17,000 new voters came in place. Of course, the opposition argue that there were...
Tony, there are allegations that some voters,
yes,
I mean, there are some people who were ferried during the registration time to come and register in OMORO district. Does that connect with the skyrocketing number of voters who shoot up and made it to be at 38,000? Could that have a linkage?
Yeah, I would strongly agree that there could be a linkage between the allegation that there were persons who were ferried from outside the county of OMORO to come and register as voters within OMORO in a large number, because that was an allegation that was brought even right before the by-election took shape, when Electoral Commission released this roadmap. That allegation was brought when the process of verification and registration and re-verification of voters was brought in. Remember the FDC camp, Honorable Ken PP raised that very vividly, and majority perhaps could have taken it lightly, but we see it shaping the numbers of the votes that were counted. Because I want to be very categorically clear that Toilet Simon Akeja, the NUP candidate, had a very strong support from about 3 sub-counties that I could clearly tell. That is Achet, that is Odek sub-county where he comes from, that is Orafoyo. But if you could clearly see, at least from the results that we saw, it is won in this by-election fairly, fair enough, fair and square. You can't tell me that even right in the home or the home ground of Toilet Simon Akeja, the NRM candidate swept all the votes, because there were polling stations that the NRM candidate would get 699 votes, and the NUP candidate would get maybe like 4 votes. And there were even very many polling stations that the NUP candidate got 0 votes, very many of those. Yet in the previous election, this, and I will categorically state that in the previous election, the NUP candidate who was then contesting on the FDC ticket in the 2021 general elections contested as LC5 of OMORO district. And I would clearly tell you, this is a gentleman who did not campaign as intense as other candidates, but swept votes in 4 sub-counties. He did not campaign, but still won clear-cut in 4 sub-counties. And these are the major sub-counties that were shaping the numbers and had the majority numbers of voters. That is Achet, Odek, and Orafoya. So for you to tell us that the NRM candidate won in all these sub-counties that are predominantly always voting toward the Simon as a person, regardless of his party, ever since, with a clear voting pattern, even when he was contesting with the late speaker, it clearly tells you there were a lot of things to be questioned, and a lot of other things that maybe investigative journalists need to interest themselves in to find out perhaps what could have taken place, because you would find allegations of people being kidnapped. Why would you, in this case, take away polling agents? There were very many polling stations that had no polling agents from both the NUP camp and the FDC camp. That is on record. So, I mean, you would find out that this could have shaped the angle of having all these irregularities that we believe took place, because having kidnapped, having to take away, or having to arrest a polling agent who has clear identification clearly shows that the security officials manning the by-election were really not fair, or were really biased on one side. That I can clearly tell.
Tony, you've just explained that there are very many things that were not fair and on ground that did not favor opposition political parties. So, what are some of the factors that helped NRM win and made opposition not to? Because they are talking of very many things that were not favorable on their ground, on their side. So there are things that favored NRM. So, what are the factors that you think made NRM manage to win this election, and what happened wrongly on the side of opposition? Are you getting me, Tony?
I can clearly tell you that some of the things that shaped the by-election, just like I told you, the angle of military deployment, the angle of security deployment. Of course, it created fear, and I think even in the previous discussion we had on. Yes, I'm getting you. Can you get me? Yes, I was explaining, and I said that just like I clearly stated earlier on, that the angle of military deployment or security deployment shaped the narrative of intimidation and threats that I had hinted on, that it would affect the number or the turnout in the voters. The voter turnout, I think this has been recorded as the lowest voter turnout in any by-election. So if to speak that we look at the figures that the Electoral Commission brought out as people who voted, Electoral Commission said NRM candidate got over 14,000 votes. The NUP candidate got over 1,500 votes. So if you're to total all this, and let's say 1,000 votes for the other candidates, so that means, let's say approximately 17,000 people voted, okay? 17,000 votes were cast, looking at even the invalids and all that. So if you look at all those numbers, and you have 17,000 voters, you would clearly tell that if you have 17,000 voters, and you tell us that you've registered 38,000 voters, it clearly means that 21,000 voters did not go to the polls. 21,000 people did not go to the polls. What does that mean? That clearly approximates to the number of registered voters in the previous election. If you do your math right, you clearly see that perhaps most of the people who voted in the previous general election did not vote. That is to statistics, because I was calculating the numbers. If it is 17,000 people who voted approximately, but we had 38,000 registered voters, it exactly subtracts to about 20,000 to 21,000 voters who did not vote. That exactly accounts for the exact number of voters who had registered in the previous election, the general election. So to speak, it means that the people who really were supposed to vote perhaps could not have voted, or did not get the time to vote, because also there's what affected the voter turnout is the fact that this is a rainy season, and most people decided to go to the gardens, and we're not sure whether they went to dig. That's why perhaps we saw the NRM moving to collect voters, especially with the scenario of the military truck. That's only one truck that got an accident, and perhaps it's the reason why we got to know, because of the accident. So, and then maybe the other factor that affected the opposition so much was the angle of money. This is a very tough economic situation, and when someone is given 10,000, someone is given 5,000, at least I could tell you that I didn't see 5,000, we didn't see 5,000, we saw amounts of 10,000 onwards, 10,000, 20,000 were being used. So at least I'll tell you that if someone is being given 10,000, 20,000, in a very hard economic situation like we are in, there's the inflation in this country, we've seen the costs of basic commodities have gone high, certainly, there would definitely really be the issue and the concern of people going to vote basing on the money that was being given. And of course, I wouldn't think opposition had a lot of money to spend to their disposal, like the NRM candidate had a lot of resources to their disposal. They had all the VIPs coming in to support them. The president came through as the NRM chairman. The Speaker of Parliament came through, the Prime Minister came through, the entire NRM Secretariat was camped in OMORO and in Gulu. So you would expect the disparities in the results basing on the deployments, basing on the investments every stakeholder made. So the financial muscle of the sitting government is, of course, stronger than that of the opposition, that I can tell you. So that shaped the by-election so much because of the money that was spent, the money that was used. Of course, there were other analysts who were making arguments that even the money that was spent in the by-election alone is actually tripling or even quadrupling the money that the NRM candidate would get as a member of parliament in the House.
Thank you, Tony. We are going to go for a brief break, then we shall return with the next segment.
Hey.
Why are you running?
That sounds so crap.
When are you leaving my house?
I think just give me 1 month. Huh? Just 1 month. I strategize and when I'm able to relocate my family.
Right. I have given you more than enough time. So your problem is relocating your family.
No, I need to relocate them, but also, of course, more time.
That
The
can
idea
be-
is
that
give
can
me
be
more
handled.
time.
That should be enough to settle you down.
Anyway, thank you.
What is he doing in my home?
I own this place now. Madam, you have 3 days to vacate.
What is the meaning of this, Nathan?
I'm sorry, Beatrice. I've sold this house.
Without my consent? I'll fight this madness.
No, Beatrice, please. Beatrice, please, Beatrice. That man is very connected. He's very powerful. Please, let's not go there. Besides, he has given me a check. We can start from here. We can really start from here.
But why? Why would you do such a thing?
Beatrice, I had politics, campaigns. I had to use. I need a lot of money to remain in the race.
You borrowed money from this money lender to run campaigns? Didn't I warn you from taking such a move?
We are unnecessary.
This doesn't concern you.
But I needed to save our parliamentary seat.
But you still lost. However much we invested.
I'll start from
We are worthy 5 million? Only?
Hey, Beatrice, man. In politics, you fall and rise. You can lose an election.
So you believe you will raise again?
Yes, I can win again and become a parliamentarian and put my life back together. Would you write another one? Hey, Beatrice! Please, Beatrice! Please don't leave me.
Leaders like these are highly susceptible for political corruption and will not be service delivery oriented.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Welcome back from that break. We are discussing about the OMORO by-election, looking at the implication for the upcoming by-elections in Uganda. Now, I want to bring on board Mr. Henry Muguzi, who is a political finance expert and also someone who has observed elections in Africa and Uganda for some good time. Henry, you've been listening to our friend from Gulu, Mr. Olanya Oleng Tony, who is a community journalist who has been monitoring and covering what has been happening in the OMORO by-election, just telling us, giving us a picture of what almost happened. What happened in OMORO is like a replica of what happened in the 2021 general election, where we saw too much money being put into the election, heavy deployment of security and military. What are your thoughts on such incidences which are causing deficits in the integrity of our elections?
Thank you, Abel, and thank you, Tony, for being so keen on the details that you've shared with us. You have raised the two very important things that have really touched me. The first one, when you observed that there were instances where UPDF trucks were being used to ferry voters to vote for a candidate of a party. This misuse of a public institution that is UPDF to ferry candidates, to ferry voters to vote for a candidate of NRM, which is just a party, is an abuse of democratic principles, is something we should condemn in the strongest possible terms. That said, of course, we have a worry. The other time I called it an epidemic, where the men and women who offer themselves to stand and the political parties that field these candidates always, quite too often, tend to use money to manipulate the minds and the thinking and the thoughts of our voters, but also to control their consent. Because to a poor person, to pay them 10,000, our voters are, are framed in such a way and manner that if you donated 10,000, you would be the biggest miracle they will have seen that year, and therefore they will have to feel compelled to return the favor. And therefore, if what Tony is reporting is true, that at least every voter in OMORO received 10,000. Of course, there are others that received more. It means that money was used to control the consent of the voters. It means that the outcome of the election, of the by-election of OMORO, is not a true reflection of the will of the people of OMORO, but it is a reflection of the power of money. If you, in a situation where the party in power that is managing government is taking lead in vulgarizing and bastardizing our politics by using money, would turn them from being leaders and convert them into misleaders. We would expect a government worth the name, a party worth its title, to lead by example and demonstrate by word and deed that democratic principles are principles that should be espoused. But for them to take lead, of course, we also condemn the parties in opposition that you tried to use money. We have a problem on our hands as a country. The earlier and the sooner we legislate, we put in place legislative roadblocks to make it difficult for these economic hitmen to vulgarize our democracy, the better. And so I thought I wanted to emphasize that and rally the citizens to do whatever we can within our power to ensure that we steer clear of this epidemic, because this epidemic is going to go down, to take our democracy down. No wonder we are already experiencing what you can call democratic stagnation or reversals. So that's what I wanted to stigmatize for now. And back to you, Abel. And Tony, thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. I want now to go back to Engineer Olanya Olen Tony. I want you to try to take us through the issue of vehicles moving with concealed number plates. Can you try to elaborate more on these vehicles? What were they carrying and which kind of vehicle were these? Were they government vehicles? Because the allegations that these were also government vehicles whose number plates were concealed. You were on ground and you had other members on ground. What did you discover more about these vehicles?
Please come again. I didn't get you well.
I was saying there are vehicles we saw.
The network is breaking.
There were vehicles we saw online, on social media and also mainstream media that were moving around.
Hello? Could you please come again? The network is breaking.
I'm saying there were vehicles on election day we saw moving around. Are you getting me now? Hello, Tony. I think Tony's network is not very okay.
Yes, please come again.
Yes, I'm saying there were vehicles we saw that were moving around OMORO on election day, but they had concealed number plates. What were these vehicles transporting? And the allegations also that these vehicles were government vehicles. Was that true? And try to take us through some of these incidents that happened regarding the vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Abel. And thank you so much, my other fellow panelists. I want to tell you that the vehicles were indeed government vehicles. We also did not only see government vehicles, we also saw security vehicles. The police also covered. There were police patrol cars that were also covered. I hope you saw those pictures and videos. Police patrol trucks that were covered. And another interesting bit was what was used to cover those vehicles was another interesting turn of events. Other people were using other cars. You would see they were using mud to cover. So of course some parts of the number plate would peel off. And another interesting bit, some were using black caveras to cover those number plates, and then of course sellotape to cover the VAT, especially that assigned to the RDCs. Okay, we saw those cars, and of course you could not clearly tell which are government agencies, of course, but of course there were stroke C cars, and that we understand is the cars you covered that we saw that they were covered. So those were the cars. Some were government cars, some were private cars.
Wow, our network is not favoring us today. We have internet problem with our colleague. But I think
yes, please.
I think you're back. You can proceed.
But did you get my point?
Yes.
Yeah. I was saying the most of the covered cars were security cars, of course, cars used by the RDCs, and then the other cars that were covered also were private cars. They were Harrier cars that we saw that were covered. Then also we saw police covering some of their cars. Yes, police also covered some of their cars, and these are things that we captured.
That's great. Now we also have instances where we saw on the same media and social media plainclothes men carrying guns and arresting members of opposition and especially their polling agents and some of their leaders. For example, we saw one of the MPs from Kampala this side being arrested and taken. What were these police plainclothes persons doing in the community, and who were they working under? Whose orders were they working, operating under?
I can't clearly tell under whose orders they were working, but of course that is like a shame to our democracy for you to have plainclothes operatives in having guns. That gives a very bad picture of our democracy. It gives a very bad picture of the electoral process. Some of us were forced to call it a military operation, not necessarily an election now, because trust me, it was beyond the expectation. We expected the election to go as smooth as possible, but an election whereby you go on intimidating and picking up members that you are competing with, we would expect that to be the most unfair scenario. And of course, but that is what was expected. Some of us foresaw this. We told you clearly last Friday that we'd expect a lot of deployment, we'd expect a lot of military siege, which is clearly as expected. As early as the day before election, they were already picking up polling agents. Polling agents are stakeholders in the by-election, are stakeholders in an electoral process. These are agents that have clear identification by the Electoral Commission. We had earlier on that when we're trying to follow up with the Electoral Commission, that members of the Electoral Commission headed by Justice Biamakama, who had gone to OMORO, had actually put off their phones. They only put back their phones later in the evening. And the other strange thing that would clearly tell us that there was a motive behind the arrest that were calculated by the security team was because that after now the end of the polling day and the results starting to come through, all those who were arrested were released. You'd wonder, arrested, released without even a charge. I mean, that does not add up. It clearly shows you that there was really a high hand in trying to, of course, frustrate the efforts of those other members who are trying to, of course, participate in the democratic process as legally mandated by law.
Thank you. Now, I want you, as one of the members who come from Acholi sub-region. I know a lot. The departed Right Honorable Speaker Jacob Olanya was doing a lot of things for Acholi sub-region and Uganda at large. What do you expect, and also what should voters expect in the first 100 days of the MP elect? That is Andrew Ojok Olanya.
The MP elect seems to be a very young man who is very much determined to change the dynamic. The MP elect is one person who seems to be very much interested in shaping the by-election. Of course, trying to communicate and trying to be a humble person is one of the aspects that I saw in the young person of Andrew Ojok Olanya. I would think, let's give him a benefit of doubt that he's one person who can perform, leaving the fact that he knows there are glaring issues in OMORO. I can authoritatively tell you that if it is poverty, then if you've had a poverty in northern Uganda, that the poverty that
we are having a little bit of network challenges with our guests, but I know you will be coming back shortly, and we shall continue with the discussion about OMORO by-election and the implication on what it has in the.
Yeah.
Henry, maybe you can chip in. He was trying to give us what the electorates in OMORO should be expecting in the first 100 days of the MP elect. We do know that the late father was one of the most top government officials we had in the country, and he was doing a lot to revamp northern Uganda and Acholi sub-region at large. So you, as a senior person in the field of electoral democracy and governance, what would you expect from a person like Andrew Ojok, who has been elected as Member of Parliament?
So my good brother Andrew Ojok should not go and try to fill the shoes of the departed father, because the shoes of the departed father are too big. So he should just go with his own shoes. That is number one. He bees himself and does what he has to do by himself. And the other thing he has to do is to make sure that he unifies the electorate, because you see elections can divide. Because you see elections can produce tense moments that can polarize the electorate. So that is one thing. But I wanted to reinforce, to make a remark on the statement he said about security institutions, including the police, covering up their number plates. It means that these police security officers, including police, had already premeditated causing pandemonium should the election not go their way. Because what else explains the motivation to cover up the number plates? Why are you covering them up? It's like you can find me in my own home tiptoeing and trying to behave like a thief in my own home. Because you see, you as the security institution, what business is it of yours to hide your identity, except if you have premeditated breaking the law or violating people's rights or doing wrong things. And so I think we only have to thank the Creator that the election went the way of the NRM, because had it gone the other way, we would have been awakened to pandemonium in that constituency. So we should not tolerate these things to happen. We should not see, we need to condemn in the strongest possible terms the behaviors of police hiding and disguising their identity is a force that is mandated by law, set up by Act of Parliament to perform their duties in full glare of the citizens. They are now the ones hiding as if they are thieves. What kind of message are they putting across? And of course, in a situation where the country is just reeling from the effects of the drones that have terrorized and demonized a bigger percentage of the population. I think we need better, we deserve better as Ugandans. These public institutions must understand who they serve. They serve the citizens of Uganda. So I thought I would reinforce that point because it is really also concerning. And thank God that the election went the way they had wished it to take.
So I want to ask all of you one last question as we conclude the show, because time is not on our side. What lessons do we draw from this by-election as journalists and election observers?
I think for me, on my part, there are quite a number of by-elections to come. Maybe the gesture that was demonstrated by the other political parties, including the NRM, of visiting the NUP offices in the sub-constituency, which had been broken into. That gesture is a brotherly gesture, which I think should be carried forward, because you see, when we contest for elections as political parties, we should not forget the bigger picture. The bigger picture is Uganda. The bigger picture is Uganda. There will be Uganda after all these parties are gone. We are first Ugandans before we became NUP and NRM and everything. And so Uganda should be the bigger picture. And also to call upon security to bring down the scale of deployment during elections, because you see, to act in some form of over the top form, as if you're going for military expedition, I think only serves to drive fear into the voters. No wonder the turnout was very low, because I'm sure many people, especially women, feared having seen the numbers and the deployments and the things that are unusual. They feared to turn up. So I think those are the lessons we need to carry forward. Thank you
so much, Henry. I don't know whether our brother engineer Olan Oleng is online. He would also give us his views on the lessons. Okay, I think he's offline. I would like to thank all our viewers outside there. Thank you for being part of the show. Thank you for following. All I want to say that an electoral process should always be a free will of the voters. Let the voters be allowed to express their free will when they are voting. They should not be manipulated or intimidated to exercise their will under force or being coerced, manipulated by money to vote for leaders not of their choice. Because once you vote for leaders who are not of your free will and choice, they won't be able to serve you. They will go and serve their own interests. I want to thank all of you. My name is Abel Esero. Let's catch up again next Friday, same time, same day on ACFIM Talks, which is brought to you by Alliance Finance Monitoring, a political finance watchdog in Africa. Thank you. Meet you next time.